Good afternoon, good morning, I guess, 11:30 to all you young leaders, and welcome to what I'm certain will be another outstanding virtual young leader meeting. I'm Steve Gregorian, CEO of the Detroit Economic Club, and I hope everyone is enjoying another beautiful Michigan summer day. I also hope you have a tea time, but not till after this call. So for today, we're going to spend 45 minutes together where, like all young leader meetings, we'll learn from a successful executive and grow our DEC member networks. We'll spend 30 minutes with our guest today, and then we'll invite you to stay for an optional 15-minute networking session where we typically have some fun. For today, we do want your video on, your mic's muted for the beginning. And after I interview Mark, we will have some time for questions. If you want to ask Mark a question, just use the chat box to let us know you've got a question, and then I'll call on you in order for your live question. So let's get started. Our guest today is Mark Mendola. Mark is Vice Chairman and U.S. Managing Partner at PwC. His most important job, however, is DEC Treasurer, where his voice, leadership, and opinions are highly valued by me and the DEC board. In fact, Mark has been DEC board member since 2002 and our treasurer for 16 of those 18 years. Mark's a CPA. He holds an undergrad degree from Oakland University and an MBA from Notre Dame, so go Irish. And finally, on a personal note, I count Mark as a very dear friend and a close confidant on all things DEC. So Mark, welcome. Thanks for your time and all you do for me and the Detroit Economic Club.
Hey, thanks, Steve. It's great to be here. It's fun just to see everybody on the video. And I don't know if his name is Shaft or whatever. Take that damn Michigan hat off. You're killing me, man. I mean, I always have a Notre Dame logo behind me, so I get distracted when I see Michigan out there, or Ohio State as an example. But Steve, you look at, I count you as a really close friend. I love what you've done with the club. And this is really important. And like you, we were young once, and it's these opportunities for networking, learning and sharing is important for everyone's professional and personal development. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks, Mark. So let's get started. We've got about 30 minutes here. You and your firm, you've done a lot of thinking and research about COVID-19 impacts. What do you think are the long-lasting implications of what we're going through?
Yeah, so let me just level set for a second. I can only speak from my view of my role. So with our chairman, I lead our firm of 60,000 employees across the country and about 4,000 partners. And in March, I was traveling across the country. I was kicked out of Microsoft. I was in Seattle at the time, beginning of March, because the virus hit that part of the country. We quickly went to New York, and then we were asked to leave New York as well. I've been home here in Troy, Michigan ever since. We certainly don't know anything more than what you might read or hear from the medical profession and all that. From a business perspective, we're thinking an awful lot about how we help and serve our clients, as well as make sure that we're protecting the safety of our people, and including safety means health and well-being. None of us were prepared to be at home for this extent of time. We've learned a great deal in terms of things that it's enjoyable many times. Other times, a lot of people want to get out. The most important thing is that we've learned is all my CEO conversations has been everyone's talking about safety first, and that's going to be a theme throughout our discussion, Steve. Safety for your own employees, safety for your customers, your vendors, and etc. The second thing that we've learned a lot about COVID is that there will be winners and losers. And I don't mean this on a personal human side, but in terms of the businesses. You look at what's happened to people like companies like Netflix, they've skyrocketed. Google, Zoom, all those tech-enabled enablers to help you do your job remotely and virtually has done very, very well. At the same time, you look at the energy sector, you look at the hospitality sector, they've been decimated. Now, I know a lot of the executives in those spaces, they're going to do great things to come back. But one of the things that I've learned is it's always important to look at your business model and anticipate things that might happen and begin to transform your business such that. So for example, a number of years ago, we doubled down in our technology investment whether it was pure luck or smarts into infrastructure and video capabilities remotely. To date, we have not had one interruption of servicing our clients where other firms have. So we're blessed, knock on wood, to have made that decision. And other companies are doing quite well where other ones are struggling. But we do see that there is no certain economic recovery curve. Everyone is looking in terms of not only the medical field, but the confidence that people have to go back to work. And until people feel confident of their safety and their security, whether there's a vaccination or appropriate testing, I think we're going to continue to trudge along, Steve, for quite some time.
That's a lot to think through, but thank you for that. So there's lots to talk about returning to work. How should businesses be thinking about return to the office?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And again, I'll repeat it, safety first. One of the things that the companies did not appreciate was, I'll give you an example. So my office in New York is a big tower. Someone got affected on my floor. We had to shut down the entire floor. These are hundreds of thousands of people, all because of one person. That was the time before we had contract tracing. That was before we had testing. Now it's really important that organizations have the appropriate measures of safety before they allow people back. You might see mandatory scanning of temperatures, disclosures, contract tracing tools, so that, Steve, if you were to be impacted or affected when you go back to the club, you don't have to shut down the whole club. Through contract tracing, we know the 2 to 3 people that you may have had interactions with during the time that you were at risk. So a lot of these companies are going through those same guidelines. I've spoken to many in Detroit. They're all going through the same framework. But the most important thing is I don't think that there's a big rush. Everybody kind of wants to work a little bit differently. People might want to get into the offices. I think what you'll see is groups will go on Mondays and Wednesdays. Groups might go on Tuesdays and Thursdays. No one will be on Fridays. And then you have to adhere to the following protocols and safety standards going forward. You heard some time ago, Ford had to shut down one of their assembly lines, all because of one employee got sick. And I think, I don't know where they were on their contract tracing, but I can guarantee you right now that won't happen in the future.
So that's a good segue into kind of all things Detroit Economic Club as well. But I love technology, but at the end of the day, business is done face to face. People love to network. They love to sit down, just like you sit down and travel around the world and sit down with CEOs. Talk to us about business travel and business conferences. Are they going to resume? And if not, how do we preserve those relationships and culture that exists because of interpersonal interactions that need to take place?
Yeah, so for context, our firm is likely the top 5 client customer: Delta Airlines, United Airlines, American Airlines, Marriott, Hyatt, Starwood, Hilton. You can go on and on and on. A lot of those companies are asking the same questions of firms like us. At any given day, we would have something like, I'm going to guess, probably 8,000 to 12,000 people on airplanes. So I can only speak to what we will do. We're in no hurry in this upcoming next 6 to 12 months to go back to face-to-face large group gatherings. We will likely, hopefully, when there's a vaccination and we feel more confident, have smaller group settings. Maybe they're in a local market or region. But in the days of having groups of 1,000 people gather and convene and having a hospitality tents, going to the Players Championship, and etc. As you know, Steve, I think that that's all going to be delayed for quite some time until there's greater certainty. And so, as you know, I think the Rocket Mortgage Classic is being played this week with no crowds. PwC is a big advocate of City of Detroit. We'd like to participate in that. That breaks our heart. So I think everyone's trying to balance it, but I don't see a particular timeline in mind. All I know is we don't need to make the decision 12 months out. We're making the decision 3 months out, maybe 6 months out, and being fair to the other vendors so that they can do their own workforce planning. But I don't think it's going to rush back, that's for sure. But the last thing, if I could, Steve, as much as we think that we know some of the answers, the one question that you asked that we don't know how to answer is how to maintain the culture, how to drive the interpersonal interactions that we all enjoy, the cup of coffee that you and I enjoy, or going out and having a quick drink after work and all that. We all miss that. And that's something that we're really struggling with, and I'm going to guess everyone else is as well.
Before I ask you another question, I'll just remind the people on this call, we're going to take some questions in a few minutes from you. So use the chat box and we'll throw it to you in a minute. Mark, I wanted to ask you about, really, unless you're a PPE manufacturer, most businesses have been hit pretty hard. And so for those that have been negatively impacted over the last few months, talk about recovery. What should they be thinking about for recovery?
Yeah, so look, I think first of all, you've seen most companies do everything that they can to protect their employee base. PwC is one of them. We've seen a decline in revenue, but we've got great momentum, and we made a big commitment to our people. We believe societally, it's important for all the organizations to hold on to their people as much as possible, because people drive the economy. So let's just start there. But in order to make that commitment to your people, you have to do everything you can to transform your business. So transforming your business means lowering your cost base. So if we're spending money that we may not need to have, like conferences, shut those down. If we don't need to travel, shut that down. If you're using third-party contractors rather than your own people, shut that down. So you do everything you can do to lower your cost base, including, with all due respect to our commercial real estate friends, you may not need the same infrastructure and real estate footprint that you once had. Again, because you much rather hold on to your people. The second thing, Steve, is to grow, top line revenue growth. And as you know, I spent a lot of time in New York. You can go back to 08 and 09 with the financial crisis. You could go back to any other recession. Those companies that focus on reducing their cost base as best as they can, at the same time doing everything they can to keep their people, and then growing revenue through new sources is the key. So let me give an example that we're doing. Our products business, our innovative technologists created a revolutionary contract tracing application. So we're able to provide value to our clients to help them in this time on automatic contract tracing. As a result of that, not only were we innovative and transform our own business, but we're able to grow revenue and then deploy people to help implement that. And the more that companies adopt that same mindset, they'll be fine. But the other ones that are not innovative, that are not thinking about transforming, are not growing their business and not cutting costs, I think that they're at risk, truthfully.
Yeah, really interesting, because what keeps me up at night is certainly, and we've done a really good job of our expense management at the DEC. Yep. But what keeps me up is trying to come up with innovative ways to drive new revenue streams.
Yeah.
And it's really, really tough to do. In fact, we're getting ready, probably right after the 4th of July, we're going to launch a survey to our members saying, hey, look, probably for the next 6 months or so, we probably won't be back together in person. Right. So what is it that you want from the DEC? What type of events, what time of day, how often would you do it? And what other ideas do you have for us? And maybe we can take some of those ideas and innovate some revenue. So
Steve, I think that's a really great point. I will tell you, the organizations that are reaching out to their people and asking for help, ideas, and support will be the ones that thrive. I can only speak from my role within PwC. We too will be doing a survey and asking our people that when we're ready, how do you want to work? So for example, for us that all live in Michigan, it's possible that we have homes or either with our parents or our own where we have some room. But there's many of our staff in New York or in California where they're with a lot of roommates because of affordability and all that. Those folks, rightfully so, want to get to an office. They want more space to be able to work. So we're going to survey our workforce and see what do they want, and can we still deliver our clients' expectations by doing it differently. And I think you're right. I don't think this is a pure top-down leadership because we've never gone through this before. And the more input that you can get from your staff and your employees and your customers, the better. So I think, Steve, you're right on point to get that survey out there.
Yeah, thank you. And so finally, before we turn it over to the audience for some of their questions, let's talk about maybe some lessons that you've learned from the past few months, personally and professionally through this pandemic.
Yeah, so on the personal side, apparently I could be very annoying to my family after a few days at home. So that's something I'm going to have to work on.
Not surprised.
Yeah, what do you mean not surprised? What do you mean by that? Look, and I'm on the road. I've been on the road for 14 years. I've never been home on a Wednesday. I want you to understand that. Like, I've never been home on a Wednesday unless it was on a vacation. So I've actually turned a negative into a positive and been blessed by being able to spend time at home, recalibrate with the family and my children, and frankly make the best of it, whether it's cooking meals, enjoying our friends, of course, social distancing, and etc. In terms on the professional side, it's really important for organizations to prioritize their investments. One of the things that organizations did do well is everyone's going to say, well, I want this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And there's so many important initiatives out there. I think you have to prioritize. We prioritize our people and we prioritize our technology. Those are the two most important investment strategies that we've done, and we've been blessed to do that. So what we've done? We've digitally upskill, we provide more tech enabled so that our people are able to use the tools better, as well as spending money on infrastructure. So whether it's Google Meets, whether it's Microsoft Teams, you know that we needed that during this pandemic. I also think that the ability to work and deliver work anywhere and at any time is more important today than the olden times. Meaning that me going to our Detroit office, sitting in a cubicle, having people outside my office, having those face-to-face conference meetings, all that, everything is moving to this virtual remote work way. And frankly, I think we've all been surprised how well it's working. It's not perfect, but it's working really, really well. And so organizations are going to have to accept that the next generation is going to want to work that way. And the biggest issue that we have from our survey data is how do we give people time to get away? So when you're in your homes and you're working really, really hard, when do you turn it off? When do you stop texting back? When do you turn off the videos? When do you become Steve the dad, Steve the husband versus Steve the worker? Because data's coming to you 24/7. So we believe that you're going to have to embed some type of work rules around shutting off at appropriate time, or just saying, I apologize, now I'm with my family, I'll get back to you later. We believe that there are a lot of our staff are feeling quite exhausted, despite that they're at home, because they're on video calls and they're working all the time. They have to figure out how to turn it off, if that makes sense, because you and I could be compressed driving home from on Woodward, grabbing a coffee, grabbing a beer, coming home, and work's done possibly. Now work and personal is intermixed, and it's hard to figure out what lanes you're in. And so I really encourage people for their own psyche to figure out what the boundaries are. Hopefully that makes sense.
Made a lot of sense. And actually, in real life, my daughter, who is a PwC employee, was home last week, and I saw exactly everything you just described on some of the effects that she was going through. So
yeah, no, it's hard. And look, I think that we've also found people's well-being, mental health, emotional health, physical health. Fortunately, the weather's good here in Michigan. Go for walks, go for runs, exercise. I actually do a fair bit of my conference calls, not only on video, but just walking a dog. And I'm focused on that, but I need to get out. I need to be focused. I need to be fresh. So we all need to figure out the different ways that we can work and still be productive and not be insulting to those on the other line on the phone.
Really good conversations. Let's turn it over to our young leaders. And there's actually a good segue. I'm going to come to Judy next because I'm just going in order of questions received. Judy, okay. You've got a question that kind of ties into Mark's last points.
Hi. So I asked the question, what do you think of America ending up with a 4-day work week? I've seen a lot of articles about other places doing that these days, and people recognizing that people have been effectively working from home and what that means for like moving forward.
Yeah, I can't speak for America. I can speak more for our firm. I do think that whether it's a 4-day work week or having greater flexibility is most important. So if 4-day work week is important to you, God bless. If it's 5-day work weeks, but I have to be done at 3, or I don't start till 10, or I need greater flexibility, I will tell you, I'm 100% in on that. I think that working virtually and remote is as exhausting as it is in the office, because rather than that perhaps commute time that we used to think was stressful, you are also able to relax by listening to music or getting geared up for the day. So I will tell you that our firm, as well as other firms, are looking at greater flexibility to allow our people to work how they want to work. And 4-day work week might be one avenue that they may choose, and we're definitely looking into that right now. By the way, that is coming, but I just don't want to answer and define it that that's the only way for us to offer flexibility. In California, as an example, I think in our San Francisco office or San Jose, they're moving towards that type of model today.
Thanks, Judy, and thanks, Mark. We're going to go to Jonathan Satterfield. Hello, Jonathan, and go ahead and unmute yourself. You've got a question.
Thanks, Steve. I know you work with mostly large companies. I'm a CPA as well, and my business model is really around leveraging that high-level skill set and financial knowledge that you bring to these big businesses down to the smaller businesses in the local economy, because it's really sustainable and it's the lion's share of the American workforce.
Yeah.
So with a company that doesn't really have the capital budget to necessarily innovate, a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, the liquor store, the gas station, what are just the couple most important things they can do to get through this crisis and then begin to recover and rebound? Because I mean that is the American middle class right there.
Hey, Jonathan, first, I love your hat, and thank you for the question. Steve knows this, other people do not. I actually own a restaurant, and it's my passion. I am very familiar, although I have a large role with large clients, I am a small business person at heart, and I own a restaurant in downtown Rochester. Next to my restaurants are tons and tons of small businesses suffering. Fortunately, the PPP loans was a bridge that many of them were able to access. Those that did not, I greatly worry about it. The only thing I have to offer is liquor stores did pretty well because for whatever reason, they stayed open, which I'm not sure I understood that, but boy, did I need it. But some of the other smaller stores, I'm very empathetic for. And I think one way might be, Jonathan, I'm sure you're giving them this kind of advice, they might need to get away from a pure premise location to online sales. They need to broaden their footprint because those commercial real estate landlords, they also have bank debt. They may not be lowering their rent. So those small businesses might need to take their products and their services, yes, through a fixed infrastructure like a storefront, but also move into a virtual online environment, and hopefully they can pick it up. But I certainly don't have all the answers, and I agree with you. Our small business is what drives our economy, and every time I drive through Rochester or other towns, frankly, I'm very concerned, to be honest about it. So thank you for the question. Thank you for giving those small businesses good advice and counsel.
Mark, I'm going to try to get through. There's about 3 or 4, so we've got about 3 minutes left, maybe a minute or so on each of these. Let's go to Almir. who's in the healthcare industry. Go ahead, Elmer.
Hi, thank you so much for today. My question really has to do with compliance in a public disaster, kind of like what we're experiencing right now. It's kind of a segue to what you just talked about with Jonathan, too, from a small business perspective with restaurants. So with the hospitality industry opening up, a lot of places you can dine in now, at least in the state of Michigan. But we're also seeing a lot of businesses turn away from dine-in just because so many customers are not being compliant with wearing masks and social distancing. So I've heard of several restaurants just going back to carry out now.
Right.
We've already seen that in our clinics and hospitals where people just don't even want to wear masks when they come to the ED. So from your perspective, with what you're seeing with the different sectors, what do you anticipate needs to happen for people to realize the severity of the problem and to start becoming more compliant?
Hey, thank you for that question, Amir. So I'm going to take my PwC hat off. I'm going to talk about my restaurant. I have an obligation for my elderly parents. I have an obligation for my staff and their parents and their people that might be at risk. And I have an obligation to any customers at risk. I don't care about people's political views and all that. We're going to follow the CDC guidelines. I encourage everybody to do that. If the CDC requires for you to wear a mask when you're at a restaurant, to enter the restaurant, as it does for our employees to wear gloves, then I think we should abide by that. And I will tell you personally, I've had 2 or 3 people come in my close proximity without that. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I don't want to pick a fight. I just ask out of respect for my mother who's ill, and out of respect for her, if they can either put on a mask or leave. And I think we need to do that. And it's not a political statement, but I think we need to be relatively strong on that. And by the way, and the PwC thing, you will be forbidden, because you're our employee, to enter our building without a mask, without going through pretty much assertions, as well as a temperature check.
Thanks, Mark. Lauren, we've got a minute left for your question, and we're going to try to get one more from Stephanie. So Lauren Gallagher.
Go fast, Steve. Sorry.
Steve, you can skip mine. He mostly spoke to it, getting on walks, trying to get out, other options for staying focused.
Okay, thanks. Let's finish up then with Stephanie Murphy. Hello, Stephanie.
Thanks. Hi, Mark. Thanks so much for being on. We're excited to have you here. 2 quick questions. What's the restaurant so that we can support you?
DeMarco's Italian Restaurant.
Thank you. And then the
Rochester, Michigan.
Thank you. And then the second one is, how do we balance, the cost containment with leadership development? Because I'm seeing a lot of companies are squashing leadership development, saying it's not essential, but they're asking managers and people to behave in ways that they've never had to behave before with no skill set. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, great question. When I mentioned we're investing in both technology and people includes leadership development, professional development. It also means upskilling. So going through the appropriate training of looking at, robotics, automation, AI, to make people feel like they can contribute at a different level. I encourage everyone, don't lose sight of the future. And don't be cost foolish just to make short-term gains, because the economy will turn around. This will pass, and you want to position yourself for greater strength in the future. And that's how I feel. So the continuation of professional leadership development is part of what we're going to focus on. And you're right. I hope that you can encourage other companies to do the same. For sure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. I know we've got a couple other questions, but we promised Mark he's got to get on the call at 12 o'clock. So I just want to say, once again, thanks for doing all you do for the DEC, especially for your time here today. And we'll say goodbye to you and look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Remember, DeMarco's Italian Restaurant, Rochester, Michigan. But no Michigan hats on, though. See you guys. Take care. See you. Bye-bye.